Islam, Hibu, Haq, Salam, Hurriyatun wa Adl. Coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. Apartment, stool step, mysteries. I'd like to talk today about the God ideal. And this is very personal, so I'm just going to go right into my story from my perspective. So, name's Khalid Rashid El. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. Migrated to Dallas, Texas when I was about 6 to help tend to my ailing grandmother. And I was homeschooled my entire life. I grew up in a Muslim, second-generation Muslim family under the ministry of the Imam Warith Deen Muhammad, son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or Elijah Poole Bey. May both the gods rest in peace. I was home educated by self, my mother and my loving sisters, and under their wise, kind, moral tutelage, my intellect and spiritual moral qualities were kind of honed throughout childhood, and I took a perchance to writing at a very young age and busied my childhood days playing with my brothers and sisters and my extended family, nieces and nephews, etc. Kind of learning the lessons of life, and also busying myself writing stories. I remember my first story, ironically, was a story called The Planet, about these mystical space travelers who traveled from planet to planet, kind of exploring the world and looking for precious jewels or gems or the stones, and each of the stone had colors. In each of the stone they found on the different planets had different magical qualities that gave them control over the forces of nature. But there were also these dark beings, these old ones, who were trying to wrest control of the stones from the space travelers. So there was this epic battle that spanned the entire galaxy, where black holes and wormholes and things were brought into the picture and stuff like that, you know. So I grew up writing and trying to jot down my thoughts, poetry, and trying to express myself. My life path is 3. I was born April 20th, 1995. I am in Aries, Taurus, with my moon in Capricorn, Aries ascendant, etc. So at a very young age, I was also drawn to the mystical. I sit at the mosque in the Jummah service, etc., and I would really love and relish the lectures given by the Imam, and particularly the mysteries of it. I guess I was even at this young age searching for the esoteric or the spirit side or the substance or the spirit of the law, you know, the deep pulsing inner chamber that you get through a road of wisdom, purity, discipline, etc. All the faithful qualities that are rays emitting from the sun, that is the divinely perfected soul, right? Or the winged globe, rising, ascending, transforming, the phoenix arisen up. I was always looking for that glittering jewel, and I always fancied myself that when I grew up I would become and at that time I had the framework of an imam, one who teaches the mysteries of Allah to the nations, you know, and benefits the soul life of men, right? And so from a very young age, I even found myself on the computer at a very young age, searching for things like astral projection and learning about chakras, meditation, and things of that nature, and discovering Buddhist philosophy. There's a Buddhist philosopher that heavily influenced my thought regarding the soul and the doctrine of the Tao. His name is Osho, Osho. That was his spiritual appellation in his position as teacher. And his book, The Book of Secrets, it's 4 volumes, just his lectures and things, really opens up kind of the mysteries and the enlightenment of our brothers in the East. So that heavily influenced my thought. I remember actually one of my earliest really spiritual memories, one of the most profound ideas that influenced me growing up was this. One, the concept of nihilism, the fact that everything means nothing, which I quickly disproved and actually gave me a perspective on the depths of depravity that the human consciousness, the human intellect, can go to deny its own source in the intelligence of its maker. That was an idea that I wrestled with, like teenage misanthropy, angst, and stuff. And my poems and writings of this time were reflected, but still, my poems and writings actually of that time, during the teenage misanthropy, etc., was based on, and I'm gonna walk. It was based on a view of the human experience from the underside. You know, like, you look out and everything seems dark when really light pulses within everything. But from an untutored soul or an untutored spirit, everything does look dark and bleak because you don't see the light or the cause or the causality and the purpose, right? And so then I go into the mysteries of the Buddhas very cursorily or summarily, and discover that the ego, like the part of us that walks and moves around, is not actually us. That's the personality or the lower self. And there's actually a higher potency, the I am, that our senses and all of our faculties report to, and it actually directs them. It is the source of power. It is the divine spark. It is the vicegerent that was set over all heaven and earth by Almighty Allah. Right. And so all of these things kind of tumbling through my head. And so around the time that I would be finishing a normal high school term and I get my diploma, etc., I have the choice of course, going on to pursue higher collegiate education. But being self-taught all these years and being deeply fascinated in like the mysteries of life, very much so fascinated with the mysteries and the benefit that they can bring to man, particularly to Asiatics, the planet over, being the greater portion of our divine inheritance from our mothers and fathers. Being deeply enthralled in the mysteries and already being disillusioned with the European system before I even saw the beast as it was, for all of its plainness and all of its boldness and arrogance. God bless them as well. God bless them as well. Because they actually need the light of our clear reasoning and our divinely illuminated mind. Because certain golem type beings on the lower planes, they actually cannot see like unity consciousness. Love is a function of like the soul, or what they call like the subjective mind or the subconscious mind and all that, or the automatic function of the vessel. It's a function of that spiritual self. And love is that portion inside of us that sees like the unity and the harmony of all things and recognizes itself as one with that and all as well, right? Man puts his hand in Allah's hand and all as well, or puts his will and in tune with the divine will that runs like a golden cord throughout all of creation and all as well, right? And so, already being disillusioned, I knew that college education was not my best bet. So I decided to take to a self-study program. And I was going off of the old biblical quote, which is the law of attraction, as they would call it now. Asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking it shall be opened unto you. And so I said, O thou divine spirit, I ask for light. I ask to know and I seek to understand the golden thread that runs through all of reality. And I seek to come into the gnosis of that. I want to know how science and creation and magic and religion and how all of these things weave together to form the tapestry of human life, human existence on the earth plane. And so I decided to embark on a self-study quest without really knowing what I was looking for, but being guided by the Father evermore. And so I was led through a lot of different systems. I mean, I studied and do study like New Age philosophy. Napoleon Hill was a heavy influencer on my way of thinking. Think and Grow Rich being still a classic of magical thought implementation, because all of our thoughts are magical. All of our thoughts are returning their fruit unto us. But there's a scientific process by which we can direct our thought and bring forth exactly what we desire. And that is very well outlined in the works of Napoleon Hill. It's kind of a initiation into the lesser mysteries. Orthomagurgy is a technical Greek term for it. Low magic, like not witchcraft, but the power of using the mind to affect change on reality. And so I was very much influenced by that, influenced by James Allen a lot. And then I started getting kind of led further and further into the mysteries. And one of the third divine thoughts that kind of struck me was the true proper meaning of alchemy as a transformation of the soul, dealing not with gross chemicals, but in elements and metals and this materialistic Western concept of turning lesser metals into gold and becoming materially wealthy, but at the same time transmuting a gross, beaten, broken soul that's descended to the lowest klepothic regions of the earth plane, bringing it back in harmony with God Allah. And so that was another very profound idea that kind of influenced my thought and still works and moves through me. So from that, of course, I got into the study of like alchemy, and I started studying also the tarot, that mystical book of Thoth, as it's called, or the book of Tahuti, which is actually a complete, it's a pictorial book of ancient symbols that describes in detail the process of initiation into the greater mysteries, and is also heavily Kabbalistic, and in a deeply profound study that even a cursory view will disclose. It is not a rude tool for divination or any other sort of low sorcery. It is actually a book of light that need be treated with the most profoundest kind of reverence, as it is a very ancient tool. And actually, if you do a study, you'll see that a council of wise men, the Silent Brotherhood, met in Fez, Morocco, and formulated the tarot, or the 22 trumps at least, as they are now, to preserve the wisdom while the church was rising, destroying everything that rung of Alexandrian greatness, of old Kemetic Moabite culture, then as now. And the tarot is a stayover and preserved in its purity of the greatest mysteries of our ancestors, and a worthy study. So from the tarot, you go into the Kabbalah. And so I started to study a bit of the Kabbalah. And from that point, it came into my mind the consciousness of initiation in its fullest and profoundest sense, as a stepping into a brotherhood of the perfected souls of all of humanity. The silent brotherhood in our Moorish lessons, but the ascended masters and things, and how that process works. And so it all started going very fast, but as you seek, so shall you find. But even from this point, and I want to remind as well, because I'm perhaps like 20 around this point, I want to remind as well, I was getting access to this information, but knowledge does not equal wisdom, nor does wisdom equate to understanding. And understanding still has to be laid on a solid rock. And that rock is purity in the circle 7, right? Pure expression. You have to be pure in heart to be able to manifest the Christ. Indeed, Islam. But I'm gathering this information, and it's sinking into my consciousness, and I'm starting to think a little bit differently and react to things a little bit differently. But I still don't know myself. So, and as I move closer to, I guess, kind of the climax, I will become more, I guess, particular with my words, speaking in the mystical way that people usually do of their private inner trials, etc. But so I went out and I sought a path for initiation, a pathway into the mysteries, and I did, and I began to walk, right? And the Spirit will definitely warn you of if things are not as they seem. Every man has his own brotherhood, his own order to which his soul belongs, to which before he even incarnated, he was destined to walk with these brothers into the light. And so if that was not the brotherhood for me at that time, my soul warned me and put me into a situation where I could begin to study myself. And so as I exited one spiritual situation, without renouncing it, but as exiting it for the benefit or following the guidance of my soul, I could say, then I was led to the truth of my nationality and birthrights by the divine brother, the God, Brother Bobby Hemmett. And it came through me studying into alchemy and hearing about this the first matter, right? And so you go in on the mysteries of the first matter, and Brother Bobby Hemmett says it clearly. The first matter is primordial melanin, the dark waters of noon. The first matter is the super subtle akasha, and it resides with the original children of the sun for a particular purpose, and that put me onto the path of self-knowledge. Because even as you study all of these disciplines, these are tools that the Master Soul uses to perfect himself, right? These sciences are tools. It is you and your divine mind that implement them and actively build yourself up, or build up that ladder of salvation back unto the highest planes of life with the Father God, Allah, right? So in all of this, and I should actually backtrack, because the title of this book is The God Ideal. And before I even got into study of the mysteries, etc., especially before I got into the study of Moorish science and the history and the ramifications of that, national consciousness, right, self-consciousness, before I even got into that study, I was dealing with the esoteric, and I formulated a 3-step ladder of my own. And that 3-step ladder was basically 3 different ideals. And the Circle 7 Quran says a man's ideal is his God. So as man unfolds, his God unfolds. And so I formulated for myself these 3 divine ideals to work towards into the light. And so the first one that I formulated that came into my mind is termed the human ideal, which is basically man at his peak, or just to say man with his 12 mansions of heaven in perfect order. Man living in peak physical, mental, spiritual condition, a fit, active vessel, fully fitted with all of the noble qualities of the perfected man. And even as they say unto the Master Yeshua, the Master Jesus, before he became the Christ, he had already in lifetimes past perfected his human nature to such an extent that the Christ could perfect through him, because he was a pure, clean, receptive vessel. He was the perfected man, or the perfected temple. And so that is the crux of like the human ideal of the Prophet Muhammad. They say he is the model of human life, the model of human excellence, which means he reacts in harmony with nature and with God and with circumstance to bring forth the most I don't know how to say it, but the perfect moment, or the perfect reaction, which is a manifestation of the divine. And that is the perfected man, and that is the human ideal, which is something to be striven towards by every man. And then the second ideal that I formulated before my path even unfolded as it has, and before the grand vistas of truth and the temples of wisdom shone on the horizon, and the mountain really rose up and showed me before that, I formulated these 3 ideals. The second is the prophet ideal. And I want to remind you, this is pre-Moorish consciousness. This is before I came into national consciousness. I was formulating and thinking of this ideal, the prophet ideal. This is before my understanding of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Renaissance he issued in for the Moorish tribes of North America, that these ideas can even occur when every avenue of colonial society is trying to suppress the light, even getting to the ears and lips of the Moors. Before I even was conscious of his great movement, that I was unwittingly a part of, I was formulating this prophet ideal, which is the perfected human being becoming a fit temple for the light. Now the light comes and resides in him and issues from his lips and his thoughts and his feelings, etc. And now he is actively projecting the divine that he serves, the divine he has found within. And now he has become a message bearer, or a light bearer. Mercury with the wing tip, the boots, etc., spreading truth and light wherever he goes. Messenger for the gods type of ideal. And every man can do so, because our body, mind, the brain, our sevenfold vehicle is basically a perfect temple, a prism, if you will, through which the pure divine light of Allah shines. It's in the building of that temple is why you have your compass, your square, and your axe, and your rule, and all of those divine tools that are told to you in chapter 5 of the Circle 7, to build that perfect vessel of conduct in purity, to reconnect the synapses of the nerves within your brain and connect the conscious and subconscious mind and raise the kundalini, fire snake, etc., and awaken the temple with a call for more light. And now it comes within you and you become the light, and then you become the revealer of the light, and thus is the prophet ideal. And the third ideal is the God ideal, which is man rising to his highest state. And on the God ideal, I'm actually going to read a short selection from the Mysteries of the Silent Brotherhood of the East, the higher degrees for the Circle 7 and Questionnaire. These are the 7 immortal postulates of the soul, or the postulates of the Aquarian age, that were formulated by the Silent Brotherhood before the anointing of the Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef, in his mission unto the sons of men, to demonstrate the fullness of Allah in man. In these 7 postulates tell the story of man's birth and his deification and being raised up and transmuted into what Allah willeth. And so I'll read these 7. The postulates of the gnosis of the empire of the soul. First postulate: all things are thought. All life is thought activity. The multitude of beings are but phases of the one great thought made manifest. Lo, God is thought, and thought is God. Second postulate: eternal thought is one. In essence it is two, intelligence and force. And when they breathe, a child is born. This child is love. And thus the triune Allah stands forth, whom men call Father, Mother, Child. This triune God is but one, but like the one of light, in essence he is 7. And when the triune God breathes forth, lo, 7 spirits stand before his face. These are creative attributes. Men call them lesser gods, and in their image they made man. Third postulate: man was a thought of Allah, formed in the image of the Septonate, or Elohim, clothed in the substances of soul. And his desires were strong. He sought to manifest on every plane of life, and for himself he made a body of the ethers of the earthy forms, and so descended to the plane of earth. In this descent he lost his birthright, lost his harmony with God, and made discordant all the notes of life. Inharmony and evil are the same, so evil is the handiwork of man. Fourth postulate: seeds do not germinate in light. They do not grow until they find the soil and hide themselves away from light. Man was evolved a seed of everlasting life, but in the ethers of the triune God, the light was far too great for seeds to grow. And so man sought the soil of carnal life, and in the darksomeness of earth he found a place where he could germinate and grow. The seed has taken root and grown full well. The tree of human life is rising from the soil of earthy things, and under natural law is reaching up to perfect form. There are no supernatural acts of God to lift a man from carnal life to spirit blessedness. He grows as grows the plant, and in due time is perfected. The quality of soul that makes it possible for man to rise to spirit life is purity. Fifth postulate. The soul is drawn to perfect light by 4 white steeds, and these are will and faith and helpfulness and love. That which one wills to do, he has the power to do. A knowledge of that power is faith, and when faith moves, the soul begins its flight. A selfish faith leads not to light. There is no lonely pilgrim on the way to light. Men only gain the heights by helping others gain the heights. The steed that leads the way to spirit life is love, is pure, unselfish love. Sixth postulate. The universal love of which Apollo speaks is child of wisdom and of will divine, and God has sent it forth to earth in flesh that man may know. The universal love of which the sages speak is Christ. The greatest mystery of all times lies in the way that Christ lives in the heart. Christ cannot live in clammy dens of carnal things. The 7 battles must be fought, the 7 victories won before the carnal things like fear and self, emotions and desire are put away. When this is done, the Christ will take possession of the soul. The work is done, and man and God are one. Seventh postulate. A perfect man. To bring before the triune God a being such as this was nature made. This consummation is the highest revelation of the mysteries of life. When all the essences of carnal things have been transmuted into soul, and all the essences of soul have been returned to holy breath, and man is made a perfect God, the drama of creation will conclude, and this is all. Amen. And thus is the God ideal. Man rising back into his glory, back into his splendor, perfecting his bodies, perfecting his consciousness, making himself a fit receptacle for the Christ, or a fit birthing ground for the Christ. And the Circle 7 says, the soil is thine own, let it not want for cultivation. So the ultimate goal of man, as said in chapter 1 of the Circle 7, as written in the ethers, written in the record book of Allah himself, is that man is to unfold and grow as a seed of fire into a perfect divine infinite sun of light shining over all. And thus was written on the ancient tablets, and thus was sent unto me as inspiration, and a reminder from previous lives, a reminder from the ancestors, even before I knew the depth of mine own blood, a message of the possibilities of man. And Noble Drew Ali said, adepts are born and not made. That which is made can be unmade. Man was made a perfect seed of Allah, planted in the soil of soul, where it grew apace and became a body beautiful, then descending into lower ethers, taking on itself a body of flesh, creating an adverse reaction, an antagonism between spirit and matter, or between the higher soul and the lower soul. And for 40 days they strive in the wilderness of earth, and the higher soul rises triumphant and subdues carnal conditions, and thus is divine man. And so this is like in kind of semi-autobiographical tape, and also kind of inspirational too, because this generation, I mean, you got to think this is prophesied, that the Moors will rise back into consciousness and kind of set the earth plane back into order. If you read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, please do, message from the gods. You read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Tablet 15, it'll state the secret of secrets. It states that light and darkness both proceeded from the source and are of the same nature, but just differing. Light is order. Darkness is chaos or disorder. The goal of spirit man is to put set darkness into light, or transmit chaos into order, and thus we work out our own salvation. But yeah, just words from Elias, your brother in light. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I hope the fam enjoys this tape and a glance behind the scenes at the stranger. Peace. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Signing out.